So today's Daf Yomi is actually the Daf Yomi for Shabbos Kodesh. We'll repeat it tomorrow in person, but now we're recording as follows on 47a of Tractate Nazir. So Misha Nizrakolav, somebody says the Mishnah, top of 47a, Misha Nizrakolav Echa Min Adamim. The Nazir, when he concludes his service of being a Nazirite, he has to bring 3 sacrificial offerings. The Ola, which is a male sheep, the Chatos, which is a female sheep, and the ram, which is a shlamim. So Misha Nizrak Olav Echa Min Adamim. So let's say he sprinkled the blood of one of these sacrifices, Minitma, and then he became ritually impure, i.e., he touched a dead body before he was able to cut his hair and officially end his Nazirus. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Soser Sakol. Rabbi Eliezer says literally Soser means destroy. So it means he destroys everything. Well, the Gemara is going to explain what that means. Whereas the Chachamim say, Yavi Shar Karbanos of the Yatar. So Chachamim say is, no, after he becomes purified, he should then just bring the rest of the remaining sacrifices. The Chachamim are saying that when he becomes purified, and how do you become purified from touching a dead body? You have to sprinkle the ashes. Somebody has to sprinkle the ashes of the red heifer on you on day 3 and day 7. And so therefore, those sacrifices which he brought in a state of ritual purity, the Chachamim say he doesn't need to repeat. It's just that when he becomes purified, he has to bring again the sacrifice. He has to resume his sacrifices of purification. Amrulo, the sages said to Rabbi Eliezer, there was an incident, Maisa, a powerful incident we're about to learn about. Miriam al-Tarmudis, Miriam from Talmud. They brought one of her offerings at the end of her Nazirus. And they came and they said to her, Albita, about her daughter, Shahaisa Misukenes. They said, your daughter's about to die. She went and she found that she's already died. She became ritually impure. The sages said, the sacrifices you brought are okay. So now what you have to do is just bring the remaining sacrifices that you have to bring after you become ritually pure. Powerful story with Miriam at Tarmudis. How was it that what was going on here? Maybe she became a Nazirite because she was desperate that her daughter was sick. I don't know. Anyway, the Mishnah tells us, so the Gemara says, let's cite that the Mishnah said, Katani, Rabbi Eliezer, Omer, Soser, Sakol. Rabbi Eliezer says that if you become Tameh after you sprinkled one of the blood for one of the sacrifices, you destroy everything. But how can it really be destroying everything? Rabbi Eliezer, Koach or Melos, Shiva Soser. Rabbi Eliezer said, we said this earlier in our tractate back on 16b and 39b. And we're going to say it again on 63b, so it appears 4 times in the tractate. Rabbi Eliezer says that as long as you've completed the days of the Nazirus, then you can no longer ruin everything. You can only ruin the 1 week that you have to wait until you become purified. Rabbi Eliezer says, Koach Amos Shiva Soser. All you do is you ruin 7 days. So Amarav, my Soser. What does it mean when it says you ruin everything? Nami de Kama Rabbi Eliezer, Soser, my Soser, Nami de Kama Rabbi Eliezer. What does it mean when Rabbi Eliezer says you ruin everything? It means Soser Carbanosa. It means you ruin your sacrifices. That's all it says. That's all it means he ruins. It means he lost those sacrifices that he brought. He has to repeat the sacrifice that he brought when he was ritually pure, whereas the Chachamim say you don't have to repeat it, you just have to bring the ones you haven't brought yet. And Achinami Mustabar, this is logical to assume that this is the way to read it. Tikatani, the Chachamim say you should bring your other sacrifices, and then you'll become purified. Chachamim say bring the other sacrifices, and then you become purified, which means that Rabbi Eliezer says you have to bring all the sacrifices. Shema Mina. And indeed, Ma'aseh Nami b'Miriam at-Tarmudis. This is the incident with Miriam, the Talmudian. Shenizrak Echa Min Adamim. She sprinkled the blood for one of the sacrifices. Then they told her that her daughter's life was in danger. They found out that she had died. Don't make her repeat the sacrifice that she brought, But they say bring the other sacrifices and then you'll become purified. Shmamina, that's the way to read it. And now we completed, we'll return to you, chapter 6. Now we're up to this very, very fascinating chapter called Kohen Gadol Nazir, the chapter of who is holier, the Kohen Gadol, a high priest, or the Nazirite. Now, how can we even think that the Nazirite is holier? The Nazirite is a sinner, according to certain positions. Rabbi Elazar HaKapar says he's a Nazirite is a sinner. But the Talmud says as follows. Mishnah says, Kohen Gadol and Nazir aimet tamim l'kroveim. Neither Kohen Gadol, neither the high priest or the Nazirite, they can't become tamei for any of their relatives. Even the 7 relatives who a regular Kohen can become tamei for, i.e., father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, and spouse. A Nazir and a Kohen Gadol cannot become tamei for them. But if they should happen to see a dead body who nobody's caring for, maybe even the person who's the most vulnerable person in society, let's say there's a homeless man, he's dead on the street. So the Kohen Gadol, who is not even allowed to attend to his own father's funeral, is obligated to attend to this person who nobody else is caring for. Let's say they're walking along the road. There's another Nazir and a Kohen Gadol. They're hanging out together. They're buddies. They're walking along the road and they see a homeless man. Nobody's taking care of this homeless man. He's a meis mitzvah. He's unattended. What should they do? Rabbi Elazar Omer Yitma Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Elazar says the high priest should do it. The high priest has to be the one to touch him and become tamei. V'ayitmei Nazir, but not the Nazir. Nazir, Chum say not only should the Nazir do it before touch the dead body before the Kohen Gadol, but the Nazir should touch the dead body even before a regular Kohen. Rabbi Eliezer says, let me explain. Yitame Kohen, I'll tell the Kohen Gadol to become Tamei, She'eno maybe carbon to muscle, because if he becomes Tamei, he doesn't have to bring a sacrifice at the end to conclude his Nazirus, to conclude his impurity as being the Kohen Gadol became Tamei. Nazir, but I don't want the Nazir to become Tamei. Shehu maybe carbon al tumaso. If he becomes Tamei, he has to bring the Ola, the Chatos, and the Asham. I don't want that. Amrlo, the Chachamim responded to Rabbi Eliezer, Yitame Nazir, She'en Kedushaso Kedushasolim. No, I prefer that the Nazir becomes Tamei, because he's not holy forever. The Kohen Gadol is holy forever. So the Kohanim are holy forever, but the Nazir is only holy for the period of his Nazirus. But the Kohen who's holy forever should not become Tamei. The Gemara explains, okay, Bishlama, Kohen Gadol and Nazir. I understand if there's a Kohen Gadol and a Nazir, that there's the dispute which one goes first. Hai Savar Kohen Gadol Adif, Hai Savar Kohen Nazir Adif. That the Chachamim are of the position that the Kohen Gadol is better than the Nazir, so therefore the Nazir should become Tamei. But Rabbi Eliezer is of the position that the Nazir is better than the Kohen Gadol, so therefore the Kohen Gadol should become Tamei. But let's say we have 2 different types of Kohanim. Mashuach b'shemen hamishcha. Let's say there was a Kohen Gadol who was anointed with the anointing oil of special anointing oil that was made. That they appointed him, and that's how they were anointed. That's this week's parasha, Exodus chapter 30, verse 29. That the Kohen Gadol was anointed to greatness with this anointing oil, and he goes against, and he's walking with the Kohen who's on top of 47b, who's Meruba Begadim, who's with the 8 garments that a special Kohen Gadol has, and he wasn't appointed through the anointing, but he was just appointed through wearing the extra garments. So so as a background, when there was the anointing oil, and the Kohen Gadol was anointed through the anointing oil. But from the time of King Yoshiyahu at the end of the first temple, then the anointing oil was lost, and they couldn't make it again because it says in the verse, Shemen Mishchas Kodesh Yezeh Liludoro Sechem. This original anointing oil was required. If you didn't have any more anointing oil, you couldn't anoint a person. So they couldn't anoint another high priest. So what would they do? They would appoint the high priest by dressing him investiture, by addressing him with the 8 garments that are designated for the Kohen Gadol. And Rashi's position is that he, not only that, but he also had to do some sort of service with those 8 garments. Maimonides says he doesn't actually have to do any work, but rather the fact that he wore them was sufficient. So how could it be that there would be 2 Kohanim Gedolim at the same time, and one was anointed and one was wearing the extra garments? The only way that could happen is during the time of Yoshio, that after the anointing oil was missing, the Kohen who was anointed ran away or he got sick, and then they appointed somebody else in his place, and then he was serving for as a Kohen Gadol, and then the first one got better or returned, and so therefore you're not going to remove the second one from his position. Okay, but this is a question, because sometimes when we have such a question, the Gemara says, why do we care? Why do we care? Why do we care? So we have to say we care because we're trying to figure out which position is a state of holiness, because the whole tractate of Nazir is trying to determine if something is holy or not. And so that's what we want to do. Okay, so you have the one Kohen, back to our question. You have the Kohen who's anointed with his extra garments. You have the Kohen who was anointed with oil. Now we're going to say, Meshuach b'shemen ha-mishcha. If the Kohen who's anointed with the oil is superior, he's holier. And so therefore the Kohen with the extra garments alone, he's the one who should touch the dead body. Because there's a special sin offering of a bull that if the Kohen who's anointed violates a sin, he has to bring a bull offering. Whereas the one who just has extra garments, he doesn't bring this bull, he just brings a sheep or a goat like a regular Jew. And now the Gemara says a second category. Let's say you have Meshuach Sha'avar. Umeruba begadim. Let's say you have a Kohen Gadol who was anointed, and then he left his status. And then you have a Kohen Gadol who is wearing the extra garments, and now he's serving as a Kohen Gadol. So one is retired, and one is actually in service now. So then we're going to say the Meruba Begadim Adif, that the one who's actually serving now is going to be better. The Meruba Begadim Avad Avoda, the one who's as the extra garments, he's actually serving, and the other one is retired. And so therefore he's the one who should do the work. Let's say you have Avar Machmas Kiruyev. Let's say you have one person who was temporarily suspended from the kahuna, from being Kohen Gadol, because he had an emission, a male emission. And so therefore he can't serve until he goes through the purification process, which only takes 1 day. And then you have somebody who's Avar Machmas Mumo. You have a person who's temporarily removed from his position as Kohen Gadol because he has a blemish on his body. Now this blemish could be permanent or it could be passing. Then we're going to say Avar Machmas Kiruyev Adif, because the one who has the emission is preferable because he's going to be back in service the next day, whereas the one who has the blemish, he has to wait for it to be healed. It could be it will be longer, certainly. So now the Gemara asks the following question: So there was another Kohen who was anointed, and his job was to stand outside the people, the army, when they go out to battle, and to speak to them and to encourage them to be pious and to have no fear. And then there's the deputy Kohen whose job it was that if the high priest got sick on Yom Kippur or he was unable to serve or he became tamei, that the deputy took over in his place. So now we have the Meshuach Muhammad and the deputy. They're walking in the street and they see a dead body. Who's the one who has to attend to the dead body? So the first says, which one is the one who is better, and therefore the other one is the one who has to become tamei. The first approach is to say that the one who goes out into battle, he's the ideal one, and so the Kohen who's anointed to go into battle, he's the ideal one, and the other one is the one who has to, and the Skan is the one who has to become tamei. The Chazi L'Mechama, because he's able to lead them into battle, he has an actual role, and he was anointed. Whereas Odel Maskanad, if maybe the anointing one is better, maybe the deputy is better, the Chazi Avoda, because he could actually potentially be better. He has the ability, if the high priest will get removed, he'll stand in his place. So that's the question. One is right now doing a better role, but the other one has the potential to do a better role. So Gemara says, let's bring a proof to try and answer this question. Tashma. Let's bring a proof to try and answer this question. The Tanya, Ein Bein Meshuach Mochama Laskan, El Hashema Imacham B'derech Matzu Meis Mitzvah, Yitam Meshuach Mochama V'Ayi Yitam Meis Sagan. Now, if the Brisa says that if there's no difference between them in terms of the laws, there's no difference between them, except for this. I mean, nevertheless, what's the difference? That if they're walking along the road, the one who is anointed for war is the one who attends to the dead body, and not the one who is the deputy. The deputy doesn't do it. So we see from here that the deputy is considered on a higher level because he has the potential to serve in the temple on Yom Kippur. Mar says V'atanya, but then we have a Tosefta that says Mashuach Mochama Kodem Waskan. Then we have a Brisa which tells us that the one who's anointed for battle is better than the deputy, meaning to say in every respect, meaning to say that Skan is the one the deputy is the one who should become Tameh from touching the dead body. So the Gemara says, well, okay, there's a distinction. Amar Mar Zutra Le'inyan Hachioso. Let's say they're both on a lifeboat and we have to pick one to save. They both fall into the ocean. We can only save one. Then we're going to save the Mashuach Mochama Adif. We're going to save the one who was anointed for war. Why? My timer, the Talube Rabin. Because everybody depends upon him right now. Because he's encouraging everybody to be strong in the battle, so everybody needs him. But in Yentuma, with respect to the dead body, then we're going to say the Skan is Adif, that the deputy is better with respect to becoming Tameh for the dead body, and the one who goes out to battle is the one who has to become Tameh. Why? Titania, Rabbi Chanina ben Antonio Somer, Mama Tiknu Skan Kohen Gadol, Shemir Bo Psul are Nifnas and Mishamish Tachtav. What's the whole reason why the deputy is why do we even need a deputy Kohen Gadol in case the regular Kohen Gadol will have a defect? And so therefore, maybe the Kohen Gadol will have a defect and we're going to need the Skan. So the Skan can never become Tameh. But in terms of saving them, well, that we only need the Mashuach Mochama because the Mashuach Mochama, everybody depends upon him right now. So the Gemara says, Ad kan lo pligi el b'Kohen Gadol v'Nazir, kika azli ba'adadi. When do we say the Kohen Gadol, when do we have a dispute who's holier, the Kohen Gadol or the Nazir, who has to touch a dead body? Only when they're walking together. But if each one's walking by themselves, they certainly have to become tamei to take care of this dead body. What's the source for this idea? The source for this idea is based upon the following Brisa. What's the source for the idea that the high priest, even while he's going to serve in the temple Yom Kippur, has to go and take care of this unattended dead body? It says in the verse that the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to touch any dead body. What's the verse referring to? If you want to say he's talking about people who are not relatives, of course, it doesn't even need to be said. If a regular Kohen who is allowed to become tamei for relatives cannot become tamei for non-relatives, Kohen Gadol she'eino matamei l'krovim eino din she'eino matamei l'rechokim. Kohen Gadol is not allowed to become tamei even for relatives. For sure, he can't become tamei even for people who are non-relatives. So the Torah is telling us that the Kohen Gadol cannot become tamei. So the Kohen Gadol cannot become tamei even for relatives. But it's saying aviv hu de'eino matamei, hamatamei hu meis mitzvah. He's not allowed to become tamei for relatives, but he is allowed to become tamei, and he's required to become tamei for unattended dead body. And that's the whole idea, that the high priest, even while he's going to serve on Yom Kippur, has to stop what he's doing to care for an unattended dead body, a meis mitzvah. All right, we'll stop here. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address.